So welcome once again to GS 182, which is your first semester biology. My name is Vincent Wong, and I'll be teaching you the biology course. I also teach the second semester anatomy and physiology, so maybe I'll see some of you again next semester. So before we begin today, I just want to go through some of the basic information related to the course so that you have an idea of the structure of the course, as well as information about the assessments, the breakdown of the assessment, the type of assessment, and the first half an hour is going to be just basic background information for you. Okay, hopefully we can get it done, in a little bit shorter time, but generally it takes about half an hour. Feel free to ask questions during this time. You can use the chat box, you can unmute and ask questions, whichever way you feel comfortable doing, okay? So this is introductory biology, as I told you, and it's separated into two units, if you would, two half, okay? First half of the course, we will say unit one, okay? Unit one. That is going to have 5 lectures, okay? Lecture 1 to lecture 5. Okay, 5 lectures in total. And within the first unit, we are going to have 2 quizzes. So quiz 1, quiz 2, and then there is going to be test number 1 as well. Quiz 1 is going to be 10% of your final grade. Quiz 2 will also be 10%. And test 1 is going to be 20%. Okay. I will let you know what exactly is on the quiz as we get closer to it. But generally, quiz 1 is going to be lecture 1 to 2. Quiz 2 is lecture 3 to 4. And then test 1 is lecture 1 to lecture 5 plus the lab. We're going to have a lab as well. So for the lab, you will have to submit a report, and that is going to be 10% as well. Now the lab is going to be done virtually, so you don't have to go to the campus or anything like that. You don't have to buy any equipment. Everything is just going to be done in an online setting. Right? So that makes up 50% of your grade, right? And Unit 2 is pretty much the same thing. Unit 2, we're going to have lecture 6 to 10, and you're going to have quiz 3, quiz 4, also 10%, 10% here. This is going to be lecture 6 to 7, lecture 8 to 9, and then you're going to have test 2, which is 20%, and that's going to be lecture 6 to lecture 10. Right, so in this way, plus the lab, of course, plus the lab. So this is lab number 2, which is going to be 10% as well. So the two halves are kind of independent of each other. Right? Once you finish test 1, you will not be tested on those materials again. Now, in terms of what kind of questions you have on tests, we will have multiple choice questions. We will have some application questions, which are in the form of multiple choice. So your standard multiple choice questions are like recollection of facts, okay? Like which of the following is an example of a carbohydrate, right? That's like a basic multiple choice, right? Whereas application questions would involve a little bit more thinking and applying what you know. So it's not something you can just easily look up in the notes. For example, you really have to think about the scenario and try to apply what you've learned to get the answer. So each quiz and test, there will be some application questions. It's still in the form of multiple choice, but it's harder. And then there are also multi-select question. A multi-select question is a question that has more than one correct answers. So you have to choose all the correct answers to get full marks. And if you choose extra answers that you're not supposed to, then you're gonna lose marks, right? So the standard multiple choice question and the application questions are 1 point each, whereas the multi-select questions are going to be 2 points each. Michael has a question. Will the 2 units lead us to a midterm? There's no midterm, okay? Like everything you see on the screen are all the assessments, right? It adds up to 100%. Test 1 is essentially your midterm, okay? It's like your halfway point. It assesses you on everything you've learned, in the first half of the course, right? So it's like a midterm. All right, hope that answers your question. Yeah, so that's pretty much the breakdown in terms of assessment. Any questions you guys want to ask about these things before I tell you more? Fahima, you request to record the meeting. You don't have to record it, okay? I'm recording it for you, okay? Once at the end of the class, I'm gonna post this online, and you will have a copy of it, okay? So there's no need to record it on your own. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, by the way, captioning is also enabled. If you want to turn it on, some people think that I sometimes talk too fast, and with a bit of captioning, it might help you uh, keep pace. So you can turn that on if you need to. All right. So what else do I need to tell you? Right. If you need to get in touch with me, the best way to do it is to email me. All right, I'm gonna type my email here. You probably receive an email from me already. Um, that's how you got the information about how to come to class. This is the preferred email for you to use. There's another one with the 41 in it, but this one is probably a little bit easier for you to type as well. So if you have any questions at all, if you need accommodations, if you need an extension on an assignment for whatever reason, you just email me here. I'm pretty quick with replying email. Usually you will hear back from me, within the hour or two if it's during, daytime. But 1 day is the longest that you're gonna have to wait before I reply to you. If you don't hear back from me for more than a day, that means I did not get your email. Sometimes email get lost. Sometimes people send it to the wrong person. So just send again if you don't hear back from me for more than a day. Also, when you email me, you need to tell me which class you are from, because I have several classes, and it just makes it easier for me to answer your questions if I know which class you're from. Let's say you email me and say, hey, what's going to be on the first quiz? Well, that depends on which class you're in, right? So you got to tell me. So your class is, again, GS 182, GS 182, and your section code, which is very important, is 202. Okay. Just give me a second here. Something is a little bit laggy. I'm not sure what it is. Let me try to fix it up. Zugmini has a question. Are you going to be posting a course or curriculum summary? Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. All right. So this is the email, okay? And remember, include your course code and your course section. Let me just try to restart this for a second. Maybe it's going to be a little bit better. Now, sometimes you might find my phone number somewhere in the college website or something like that. Don't call me. I don't actually have a phone. The phone is physically on campus, right? So you call, like, I'm not going to be there, right? The best way to reach me, it's through the email. Okay, so this is the course homepage that I hope you had a chance to look at. Let me post the link in the chat box. So, if you want to click on it and follow along, that would be great. And again, if you are not able to find things later on, just look at the recordings, and you can catch up with whatever you missed. So this is where you will find all the notes, and this is also where you will be doing your assessment, your lab as well. Once you log onto eCentennial, that's our learning platform, you will see all the courses that you're taking. Not just biology, but you probably have like chemistry, math, and English and whatnot. So our course code once again is GS182. Now I will regularly post news items here to either direct you to different files, or I will give you information about upcoming assessments and where to get the notes and so on and so forth. So check the news item periodically. If there are something that's like blue, that means you can click on it and it will lead you to a specific location to again get a file or to get some readings and whatnot, right? So this is information I included in the email that I sent you last week. If you haven't already have a chance to go through it, please do so. This is our Zoom link. It's the same link every class, so please bookmark it and just use it. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30. Okay. The class notes, we basically have PowerPoint slides for each of the class, and I'll show you where to get the rest of them. Sometimes I will write additional notes as well, and those would be posted. Okay, everything I do is going to be recorded and posted. You're not going to be missing anything. Okay. You do not need to purchase a textbook, saves you a little bit of money, I suppose. We will be using like an online textbook, and you can click on it, and it will take you directly to the online textbook. It's the same online textbook for first semester and second semester. Okay. You can download a copy onto your desktop, I think, and you can highlight it and stuff like that. But this is mostly for supplementary purpose, right? You won't be tested on things that I do not cover in class. Okay, so if you read something in the textbook and I didn't talk about it in class, you're not going to be tested on it. You're not going to have to study for those things. Okay, the test material will only be from the PowerPoint slides, as well as the study guide. Right? Each lecture is going to come with a study guide to help you, help you study, right? And also there is going to be answer for them as well. Okay. So if you go to content, you will see that all the notes are available to you already. Let me just switch to student view so it looks exactly like yours. Okay, so content, and you can see lecture. Right? Here are all the lectures that we're going to be doing. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. Like I said, the first half will only be lecture 1 to 5. Now, if you click into the lecture, think of these as folders on your computers, right? So like if you click into the lecture 1 scientific method, you will see in the lecture notes, there is the regular PowerPoint presentation, and then there is 6 slides per page. Okay, 6 slides per page, just easier for your printer. Okay, like if you are not printing it out, it doesn't matter. You can download the PowerPoint slide, but this is just so that you save paper and save ink. There are 6 slides on a page. And then this is the study guide that you should also download for each class. We don't always have time to go through the study guides during lecture. We only have like 2 hours, or a little bit under 2 hours for each class. But there are sometimes questions that are in the study guides that we want to take up within the lecture. So it's better if you have a copy of it with you when you come to class. Study resources. So each lecture, there is going to be a link to the section of the textbook that's relevant to the topic. So we're doing scientific method today. If you click on the supplementary reading, it will take you to the online textbook that talks about scientific method. If you go to another lecture, then the link will take you to the macromolecule section of the textbook, right? So that way you don't have to look for things yourself. Everything is it's hyperlinked there. There is a video resource link for each lecture as well. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. I know people like to look up videos online and try to, you know, watch them and learn things and whatnot. So what I've done is I've collected videos that I think it's relevant to what we are learning for that week. And instead of you looking for these videos, it's pretty much all here for you already. So you know you can look at someone else talk about scientific method. Maybe, you know, a different perspective is going to help you understand a little bit more. You can add comments to these things, and yeah, same with the textbook. The video resources are just supplementary, so you are not responsible for additional information that we have not covered in class. Just gonna pause here for a second. Does anyone have any question for me about what I said so far or about anything else? Great. There are some crosswords you can do to help you learn the vocabularies. And then there is a self-quiz for you to practice on. Now, the self-quiz are not worth any grades. You can do them as many times as you want. But a little warning is that the self-quiz questions are easier than the actual tests and quizzes, okay? Some student in the past, they do the self-quiz and then they get 100% and then they feel like, oh, this is too easy. I don't have to study for the test. And then when they actually comes to the test or the quiz, you know, they're shocked that the questions are so different and they're much harder. The self-quiz is just meant to give you like a basic um, you know, quick assessment of yourself. Like, do you know the basic stuff? Okay, and if you do, that's great, but you got to do more studying. Okay, now, am I the first class for you guys today, or did you guys have class this morning already? Just curious. You had a class, okay. Did your other teacher talk about the lockdown browser? Maybe? No? Okay. So, the when we do assessment, you have to install something called the lockdown browser. Okay. Um, and you can try it out with this self quiz. Okay? When you click on the self quiz, here I'll click on it and see what happens. Okay, I'll click on it. Remember, the self quiz is not worth anything, so you can try it anytime. And you can see there is a button here that says download and install lockdown browser. Yeah, so you have to do this, not just for my course, but probably for like chemistry, math as well, okay? And maybe some other courses. Okay? So the lockdown browser is a software that, as the name implies, lock down your internet browser while you are doing your tests. Okay, so when you're doing the assessment online, it prevents you from opening other tabs. It prevents you from accessing your files on the computer and things like that. So you know, it's just an extra layer of things that you have to do, basically. Okay. Now, in some other courses, I think in math, you might have to turn on the camera during the test so they could record you. But that won't be the case for me. Okay, for me, no camera is needed, but you do need to install the lockdown browser. Okay, any question about that at all? Great. So let me just go back here for a second, and sometimes there are like complicated concepts that people don't get on the first time. Then I might post some extra notes for you to look at. There's another question. Will I give you review? You know, you guys are lucky. Oh, I don't know if it's lucky, but like you're more fortunate than my other class, because your class is on a Tuesday instead of Monday. So you didn't lose any class. Okay, for my Monday class, they will lose a few classes because of like Labor Day and Thanksgiving, things like that. So since we have more time, we will probably have time to do review before the assessment, okay? And we will be practicing questions during class as well. right? That's why it's important to come to class. Just because I am recording the lesson and you can view it later on, by coming to class, you can participate in poll questions, in practice questions, and there will be opportunity for us to work in small group as well, in some cases, and just make the learning experience a little bit better for you. Okay, so that's that, right? Like, you go to lecture 2, it's the same thing. You have the notes, you have the slides, 6 slides per page, you have the study guide, and video resources. So everything is structured the same. Okay, the whole course is open to you already. If you have time this week, if you're not too busy yet, and you shouldn't be, it's the first week of school. I would recommend downloading all the PowerPoints and just have them on your computer. That way you don't have to find them later on. Now there is an other folder that's important. Let me just go back to table of contents. There are the virtual labs. Don't worry about them yet, okay? When we get closer to it, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do. So don't even bother with that for now. There is a useful information though, and when you go on the useful information, there is a course outline. Someone was asking me about the outline earlier, right? You should, let me see if I can open this. You should download a copy of the outline and keep it in a safe place. Okay, it's a important document for later on. Right? Like if you move on to another program or something, and they have a biology course, and you're like, hey, I took it as Centennial already. Like, can I not take it again? Like, can I get an exemption from it? Right? Then they will ask you for the course outline. You have to submit the course outline for them to see whether the contents are similar enough or not. Okay, so make sure you download a copy and keep it with you. Now, in the course outline, there is going to be a schedule that tells you what's going on in week 1, week 2, week 3. Don't worry about. You can keep it for your own record, but this is a little bit harder to keep track. So instead, what I want you to do is I want you to download the weekly schedule. Okay, so you click on the weekly schedule and download a copy. I already have a copy download here, so it's gonna look like this. There is a question. If I don't get the answer in the study question, can you help me out after finishing class? Yeah, I'm gonna get to that in a second. Okay, hold that thought, Fahima. So this is our weekly schedule. We are doing lecture 1 today. We will continue to do lecture 1 on Thursday, and it tells you when the quizzes are gonna be. It tells you when the labs are gonna be. So for week 5, you don't have to. There are no class for that week. You just spend the time working on your lab. Okay, it tells you when it's going to be due and so on and so forth. So we do try to keep to the weekly schedule, okay, instead of the course outline. At the end, you end up learning the exact same thing. Okay, you're not going to be missing anything now. But like for practical reason, I list the day here and I list topics here. It's just much easier to see. That's all. Okay, so get a copy of the weekly schedule. I'll post a link on the news item after class for you to get to it. Okay, I forgot to mention the quiz and the test. Okay, for the quiz and the test, on the day of the quiz or the test, there will be no class on the day of tests, but there will be class on the day of quizzes. Okay, so the quiz or the test will be open to you from 6 a.m. on the day of until 11:59 p.m. Okay, so you can do the quiz or the test anytime during that window. Okay, quizzes are usually 40 minutes, around 40 minutes long. And then tests are usually, 70 minutes. Okay, I'll post the exact information when we get to it. Once you start the quiz, you cannot quit and come back to do it later. Okay, once you start the quiz, the timer starts going. Even if you quit, the timer will keep ticking. Okay, so it's not like you can start 6 a.m. and then you finish it up at like 2 p.m. or something. Okay, you can start the quiz anytime during that window, but once you start, you have to finish it in one sitting. Okay. Now, sometimes people lose their internet connection and whatnot. that's okay. Don't panic. Just send me an email. We'll try to fix it up. Okay. Like I'm a pretty reasonable person. Okay. Like if your request is legitimate, I'm gonna grant it to you. Okay. But like if your internet is disconnected every time there's a quiz, then it gets a little bit suspicious, right? Then maybe I'm gonna have to ask for some documentation. But generally, like I said, I within reason, I am going to be able to grant you the accommodation that you need. Okay. I think that's pretty much it for now. Now there is the study guide answer, and there's nothing here yet. But I will post the answers as time goes on. Okay. Like I don't want to post the answer too early. I want you to try to do the questions on your own first, and then I will post the answer for you to check. There's also class notes, and there's nothing yet because we haven't had a class yet. But after today, if we write anything, then I'm gonna post it over here. Okay. I think there's one more thing. Let me see here. Useful information. There is a little explanation here about the lockdown browser if you need to know more about it. And then there's lecture recording. If you click on it, you will see that it's empty right now because I haven't posted anything yet. But after class, I will post it. Okay, so you guys are 202, so you will basically look at your column. Okay, when you try to get the recordings. That's all. Okay, see that was exactly half an hour. Any questions before we start the lesson for today? Anything at all? Okay, well, here we go. Let me just switch back to here, and this is the PowerPoint. So I would suggest having the PowerPoint slide print out in front of you so you can take additional notes next to the slides. It's not quite the same if have it on the computer and then you're trying to look at me and explain things and try to type it out at the same time. It might not be as good. Okay, but anyway, whatever works for you. So today we're going to be doing lecture 1, and in the first line of every lecture you will find my email, and again that is the best way to contact me. Lecture 1 talks about scientific method, and this is particularly important when you're doing your first lab. Your first lab is called permeability of beetroot, and you will be using the scientific method to try to analyze your data and try to come up with an appropriate conclusion. So make sure you come back to this lecture later on for reference if you need some kind of help. Okay, so let's get started. Now, this is introductory biology. So I'm sure some of you might have taken biology before. Some of you might have taken it, some time ago, long time ago, and you might remember bits and pieces of it. And some of you might have never taken biology before, and that's fine. I will try to explain things from the most basic level, and then we build upon it as we progress through the course. So let's start with the question, what is biology? Well, biology is the scientific study of living things, a scientific study of living things. But there are many different branches in biology. There are many sub discipline within biology. For example, we have what's called anatomy. Right? Anatomy is the study of body structures. Okay? You can think of anatomy as basically what is it called? Right? What is the name of this thing? Right? This is the heart. Okay? This is the valve within the heart. This is the kidney, right? This is the whatever, right? The name of different things in the body, that's called anatomy. And then there's physiology. Physiology is what does it do? What does it do? Right? The function of the structure in the body. So you see a valve in the heart. What is the function of the valve? Right? You see these air pockets in the lungs. Well, what do they do? So understanding what it is called and then learning what it's called and understanding what it does, that's anatomy and physiology. Okay, so that's what you'll be doing next semester. Histology is the study of cells and tissues. Cells are what all living things are made up of. You have trillions and trillions of cells in the body. Tissues are group of cells that are working together to perform a function. So we have like connective tissue, we have fat tissue, right? They do different things. So studying these cells and tissues, it's called histology. Right, so we'll do a little bit of histology next semester as well. There is a picture here. It's a particular organ in the body. Anybody want to guess what this might be? It's like a wild guess. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong. Anything at all? What organ do you think this might be from? Okay, so you might not be able to tell right now, right? Which is fine. Mike Cussa is liver. Yeah, that's good guess. Lungs from Cheyenne. Yeah, so these are good guess, right? Your guess is as good as anybody's, right? Yeah, because you haven't learned it yet. But next semester, when you see something like this, you will know it's the kidney. Okay. And then there is also genetics. Genetics is the study of heredity. That's something we will actually do later on in this course. Right? So if you have brown eyes and your spouse have blue eyes, what is the probability that your child's going to have brown eyes? We're going to be looking at some of those hereditary rules and calculations. And that tends to be quite a fun topic for most people. Okay, so these are just some branches of biology that you will be learning in the pre-health program. But of course, there are many other branches of biology. There is like botany, which is study of plants. There is like, evolution, many branches. But these are the ones that we're going to be focusing on in this course and next semester as well. So again, what is biology? It's the scientific study of living things. And so we know there are many branches, but now let's talk about what living things are. Now, I would assume, will be able to tell what's living and what's not. Okay, you look at everything here on the left, you're like, yeah, I know those things are alive. And then you look at things on the right, those are non-living things, right? But like, can you guys give me some characteristics that are shared by all living things? Anything that comes to your mind? What do they all have in common? Living things. Okay, so Uthman said breathing. Okay, Sareg, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the names wrong. They have cells. Okay, anything else? Or like, are there certain things that only living things do? Yeah, they have the ability to reproduce. Well, they don't have to be outdoor, right? Like, I mean, plants can grow indoor. Right? We are indoor as well, right? And we are kind of alive, hopefully. Energy use, growth, and development. Right. So there are certain things that are only applicable to living things and not applicable to non-living things. But it's important to understand that many things in science and including biology, it's not so clear cut sometimes. Okay, it's not just this or that. There are some examples that are kind of in between, and it doesn't quite fit in one category versus the other. And one example of that would be this thing right here. Anybody know what this purple ball is? What do you think this is? That's right. This is a virus. Okay, very good. And the virus is one of those things that people can really classify them as living or non-living. Okay, and the sticking point here is that viruses have the potential to reproduce, but they cannot do it on their own. A virus is not going to be able to copy themselves unless they are inside a living thing. So if you think of like the flu virus will only be able to make more flu viruses after they infect a person. Okay, so because of that kind of caveat, scientists don't really know whether to classify it as living or non-living. Okay, it has the potential for life, right? There's a question. So would virus be known as a mix of living and non-living? They are kind of in between, right? So like the whole point is like we don't know, we can't put it in one category or the other, right? And you will see as we go on that this is a recurring theme, that many things don't necessarily fit in one or the other category. Okay, but yeah. So let's go through a list of characteristics of living things that people agreed on. I think there are 7. Okay. So, although life takes many forms, but all living things share a set of common characteristics. There's another comment. When they get the hose, they are living things. Yeah, so like there is the condition, right, associated with it, right? And I think that's why, it's it cannot definitively place it into living versus non-living. Same thing as a seed you can think of, right? Like a seed, like a plant seed, right, has the potential for to be alive, but like on its own, it's not really alive, right? Okay, so like we have different things here. They all look very different. There is the poison dart frog. There is the jellyfish here. It's called the Portuguese man of war. You don't want to be stung by one of these things. Okay, it's very, very painful, but they're so pretty. And there is the oxalotl here, which is actually illegal in some provinces to have as a pet because if they accidentally get into the wild, they could, bloom and cause like invasion of the local ecosystem. Because I think some people might have like flushed them down the toilet or something, and then they go into these bodies of water, and then they start reproducing and cause quite a bit of problem. Um, anyway, the point is they all look very different, but they all share the same set of common characteristics. So let's take a look at the first characteristics. First characteristics of living things is that they exhibit order. Okay, all living things exhibit complex but ordered organization. You look at a living organism, most of them has some kind of symmetry to it. Okay, butterfly has left-right symmetry. You and I, we have left-right symmetry. If you look at the seashell, right, there's some geometry rules that it follows. Okay, when it goes from one shell to the one spiral to the next spiral, the ratio it's decreasing by a predictable amount. Right, so all these things are order associated with living things. Okay, and that order, that complexity, is not just something that exists on the surface. If you look into the cellular structure of living things, that complexity, that order is actually preserved. The bottom right here, this is like a vessel, a plant vessel. Okay, like transport water or transport sugar, those kind of vessels, and you can see there is a very distinct organization associated with it. Okay, so this order complexity applies to the entire organism as well as in the molecular level, in the cellular level. Now, what we will be talking about again and again throughout the course is this hierarchy of organization. Okay? We start all the way at the smallest possible level, which is the atom level. right? Does anybody know any atoms at all? Like, what are we made up of? What kind of atoms? What kind of building blocks are we made up of? To make it easier for you, I'll start. Okay, like carbon. We are made up of carbon. Okay. What else are we made up of? Yes, hydrogen, very good. Anything else? Yeah, we are breathing in oxygen, right? So these are, yeah, calcium, right? Exactly. So you guys are giving me a lot of different types of atoms, and they are the building blocks for all living organisms, okay? Like atoms makes up everything, okay? But then there are specific uh, groups of atoms that are used for making up living organisms. Okay, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, right? Calcium, so on and so forth. Now, the atoms can come together to form molecules. So example of molecules would be like a water molecule. Does anybody know the chemical formula for water? You must have heard of it before, right? Yeah, exactly, right? H2O. So that's two hydrogen combined with an oxygen. Okay, so molecules is what you get when you have different atoms coming together. Okay, just curious, does anybody know another example of a molecule other than water? Something that you will find in the body. Yeah, glucose is another example. Okay, so if you don't know what glucose is yet, don't worry, we will learn about it. And glucose is C6H12O6. Okay, Aguado say pepsin. Yeah, that is another one. Good. Right. So the glucose is bigger than water. Water only has 3 atoms, but glucose has 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen. You don't have to memorize these for now. Okay, we're going to be learning about it later on. Okay, but I'm just trying to give you a little bit of foreshadowing here. Now, some molecules are big, like glucose is obviously bigger than water, but it's not nearly as big as some of the macromolecules in the body. Okay, so macromolecules are like thousands of atoms in some cases. And the macromolecules that we have in the body include things like proteins, okay, carbohydrate, DNA, right? So these are really, really, and lipids, yes, these are really, really big molecules that build different things in the body and they help carry out specific functions. If we go up another level, then we have organelles, which are tiny structures within a cell that has a specific function. And then we get the cell, and different cell type comes together to form the tissue. I told you about connective tissue, for example. And different tissue can come together to form organs, an organ system, and finally you get the organism. Okay. So starting next week, we will be learning about atoms, molecules, and macromolecules. And then we pretty much will spend the rest of the course learning about what's going on inside a cell. And then tissue is going to be lecture 10, and it's going to transition into these things in the next semester. Okay. So, by the end of the program, we would have ascend this hierarchy of organization. Okay. So what were we talking about? We are talking about characteristic of living things. And the first characteristic is order. Okay. Not just as an organism, but there is like hierarchy of how to build an organism. There is structure associated with that as well. Let's talk about a second characteristic. Second characteristic of living things is the ability to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis. Homeostasis means an internal balance. Our surrounding, our environments are always changing, and we want to be able to maintain a stable internal environment despite of these changes. If it's minus 20 outside, we want to be able to keep our body temperature as 37 degrees, right? That's an example of homeostasis. Right? So there are different ways to maintain homeostasis. You can maintain homeostasis through physiological means, or you can maintain homeostasis through behavioral means. Okay, different ways of maintaining homeostasis, different mechanism. Mechanism just means method, different ways. Physiological means your body does it for you. Okay, you don't have to think about it. Like when you are hot, your body automatically sweats for you. When you're cold, your body might shiver. Okay? Your blood vessel might bury deeper into your skin. All these things your body does for you without conscious input. These are physiological mechanism. Okay. When you have a cut in the finger, the bleeding automatically will stop. If it's a small cut, okay, like the bleeding will stop on its own after a while. That's a physiological mechanism. Okay. You don't have to learn it. It just happens on its own. Behavioral are things that you do. You do these on your own. Right? So if it's hot, your body sweats for you. What are some things that you can do on your own to cool yourself down? Yeah, turn on the fan, right? Okay. Drink something cold. Take off the t-shirt, right? So many different things you can do. Right? So that is yeah, take a cold shower, right? So all these are behavioral mechanism. Okay. So here is a lizard. Lizards are different from us because they are cold-blooded. We are warm-blooded. That means we can maintain our own body temperature. Um, but lizard, their body temperature fluctuates with the surrounding. So if it's cold, their body temperature will drop. Okay? So in order to stay warm, they have to do sun bath. They have to stand on like a rock and then soak up the sun to stay warm. Do you think that's a physiological or behavioral mechanism? Let's do a poll. Okay, let's try. We do a lot of polls here. Let's try this. Okay, if you think it's physiological, please choose A. If you think it's behavioral, please choose B. Okay, the lizard taking a sun bath to stay warm. Is that A, physiological, or B, behavioral? Okay, very good. Most people think it is behavioral. That's correct. It's behavior. It's a thing that it does, right? Okay, like it climbs up to the rock deliberately, right? I would think, even though I don't know what the lizard is thinking, but you know, the fact that it has to make its way to the rock, it's a behavior. It's something that it does, right? So that would be a behavioral mechanism. Same thing with the dog sticking their tongue out, okay, to cool off. Um, and that would be also behavioral. Are we on the same page, guys? Do you understand the difference between the two things? Okay. Moving on. Next characteristic of living things is the ability to grow and to develop. Living things go through different stages of growth and development. You and I look very different now than when we were first born. Not only are we bigger now, but there are things that we have now that we didn't have when we were born. Okay, but for the most part, like we are still very um like you would be able to tell like okay the baby and the human and the adult is like both humans, right? Like you can tell. But for some other organisms like a butterfly, the stages are very different. Okay, the caterpillar stage is completely different life form, it seems, than the butterfly. There's nothing resembling the two, right? So some organisms go through very, very drastic changes in their development, while others not so much. But regardless, all living things are gonna undergo period of growth as well as development. Okay, so order, maintaining homeostasis, growth, and development. And the next thing is the need for energy. Okay, so some organisms, they are only going to be consuming plants, while others, they're going to be eating other organisms, right? So we call them consumers, right? Like sharks, for example, they would consume another organism. We have organisms that would be able to feed on decaying matter, like these fungus. We have plants that are able to make food directly from the sunlight and carbon dioxide in the air. Right? So different forms, different ways of making food. But the bottom line is if something is living, if something is alive, there must be a way to obtain energy. Living things are also able to respond to stimuli. Yeah, stimuli is plural. Singular is stimulus. Okay, this is singular. This is plural. Um, it's a environmental trigger. There are some kind of changes in the environment that causes the organism to respond in a particular way. We call that a stimulus. This is a Venus fly trap, and if a bug flies into it, that would be a trigger, that would be a stimulus, and it would cause it to close up, and then it would digest the bug. Right? So we call these carnivorous plant that eats animals. They're not really eating them; they're just like digesting them for the nitrogen, because these plants live in really acidic soil, which is poor in nitrogen. If you touch something sharp, then your finger is going to recoil in a reflex. That is a response to a stimulus. Okay, so in many ways, the ability to respond to stimulus is related to the ability to maintain homeostasis. Some stimulus require your body to respond in a certain way in order to maintain the homeostasis. Again, if it's hot, that's the trigger, that's the stimulus. Your body will sweat, your blood vessel will dilate, okay, to try to cool you off, to maintain the homeostasis. Next, and it comes with a fancy animation, I don't know why. It's the ability to reproduce. So, excuse me, all cells contain genetic material that can be passed on to the next generation. And all living things are able to reproduce their own kind. Okay, so pandas going to make baby pandas, polar bears going to make polar bears babies, right? They reproduce their own kind. Right? Sometimes organisms might like mix up and then they reproduce something that is a cross between two species. Does anybody know what a mule is? Like, how do you get a mule? Anybody know? Yeah, very good. Okay. If you take a donkey and then they mate with a horse, what you end up getting is a mule. Okay? So the mules are actually sterile. You cannot take two mules and make more mules. And the mule is a cross between two different species. They are super strong, apparently, so it's good for carrying loads and for farming purposes, but it's not really a species on its own. Okay, so naturally, living things are able to reproduce their own kind. Finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is the ability to adapt and to evolve. Okay, so populations evolve over time in a way that makes them more adaptable to the environment. So as the environment changes, some features, some traits are more favorable for the organism to enhance its survival or to enhance its reproductive chances. Those traits tends to be preserved within the population. And over time, the population is going to change or evolve to have more of those favorable traits. That's basically what evolution means. Okay. So here you can see the hummingbird. Oops. You can see there is a hummingbird here, and the beak is really long. That's because the plant is trying to get the nectar from has a really deep pouch, right? So maybe in the past, within the hummingbird population, some has longer beaks than others, some has really short ones. The short ones are not going to be able to get as much food because they cannot get to the bottom of the plant, right, to get the nectar, and so they might starve and not be able to reproduce as much. So only the ones with the longer beads are able to live on and have more babies, and the babies are going to inherit those favorable traits. So over time, the population evolve, the population change. Same thing with the seahorse here. Okay, you can see it's camouflage in the background. And again, theoretically, maybe in the past there were different color seahorses, but then the ones that are not this particular color, they stand out from the background. They get eaten more often. They have less offspring, less babies compared to the ones of this particular color. Right? So the seahorse that are kind of whitish pink, they live on to have more babies that look the same. And over time, the population evolve, changes. Okay? So it's important to understand individuals. Individuals do not, individual do not, does, sorry, individuals do not evolve, population does. Okay. And during the pandemic, you hear people say there is a new variant of concern that is coming, right? The Omicron variant, right? That's essentially the virus evolving, changing. Okay. When we get the vaccine, the viruses cannot infect people and reproduce as much anymore. But some of them might have mutations. Some of them might have changed to evade the vaccine. So those will be able to continue to evolve. And if those are the only ones that can reproduce at the time, then over time, the population of the virus will be made up of entirely that new strain, creating a new variant. So we're going to talk more about that later on in the course. So there you have it, 7 characteristics. Now, if you have the study guide, you will see that some of the questions in the study guides are basically asking you things from the lecture, right? List 7 characteristics of living things, right? So again, the order, homeostasis, energy production, so on and so forth, right? You can write them down and help you study. Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break? We will pause here and we'll resume at 1:35. Okay. If you have any question, please feel free to leave me a note in the chat. Otherwise, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, let's keep going here. So now that we have an understanding of what living things are, it's time to look at the other half of the definition, okay, of what biology is. It's the scientific study of living things. So let's spend the rest of the class talking about what scientific study means. What is science? The word science is actually derived from a Latin word meaning to know. You will see a lot of the vocabularies in science has a root in Latin because that's like the original language of what most of these things are written in. So science is a way of understanding based on inquiry, based on asking questions. It's natural that human beings are curious about things around them. Perhaps as we grow up, the curiosity, it's a little bit lower than when we're younger, but still, humans are curious. If you hear like a clicking noise in your house, you are curious to find out where it's coming from and why it is happening, right? So much of these curiosity, it's what drives the process of science. So there are two main scientific approach that are being used. The first one is what we call discovery science, and then the other one is called hypothesis-driven science. I think we only have time to go through discovery science today, and next class on Thursday we will talk about hypothesis-driven science. So let's start with discovery science. Discovery science involves studying something without changing it. Okay, the key thing here is that in discovery science is you are just making observations. Okay? You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to manipulate anything. You're just watching. Right? So you can be studying global warming. You're observing the changes in climate. You're observing the changes in weather pattern. That's an example of discovery science. If you discover a new animal and you're trying to understand more about it, you would be using discovery science. You'd just be watching it from a distance. You're not going to be, poking at it or anything like that. Don't touch it. Don't change it. You're just watching. That's basically what discovery science is, and it's useful and it's applicable in many situations, especially in situations where there's no way of changing the things that you're observing. Think of astronomy. If you're studying a far away planet, all you can do is observe. Like you can't change anything about it. It's so far away, right? So that is discovery science. Now, when we make observations, when we are trying to um, observe the thing we're studying, there are two kinds of observations you can make. There is what we call qualitative observation, and then there is something called quantitative observation. Qualitative observations are something that we can make with our senses. Okay, so what are the five senses that we have, guys? Help me out here. And I encourage you to unmute and talk. It just makes it more interactive. You can type the answers if you want, but in a real classroom, you'll be talking to me, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a sight, there is taste, there's smell. Very good. What else can you do? You can see it, you can taste it, you can smell it, you can touch it. And one more. This last one you really shouldn't be doing in yeah, okay, yeah, you can hear it as well. Did someone say taste already? Oh, they did. Okay, yeah, and you can hear it as well, right? Okay, good. So these are qualitative observations. You're making observations using your five senses. Sometimes our senses are a little bit um, limited as humans. We can't really see very far away, or we cannot see really, really small things. So we can use different tools to extend our senses. Okay? So you can use a microscope to help us see really, really small things. We can use a telescope to see things that are really, really far away. Okay, so let's take a quick note here and see what kind of qualitative observations we can make. Okay, so write along with me if you could. Qualitative observation. So let's start with things that we can see. Okay, sight. Okay, what kind of things can we see? We can see things like color. What else? Give me some ideas. Sure. Shapes. Uh, Texture is more like touch, right? I would think. Right? Size, yeah. You can see the state of something, like is this solid, liquid, or gas? Right? Maybe one more. What else can you see? And when I say size, right, I'm talking about like big or small, right? No numbers, no measurements, okay? Measurements is the other kind of observations. What else can you see? Color, shape, size, state. One more thing that you can see with your eyes. No? Okay, sure. We'll leave it at that. Let's try something else. We have texture. Someone said texture. So texture would be like touch, right? Touch, that's another sense. So what kind of texture are there? When you touch something, how do you describe the texture? Rough, yeah. Rough like pavement. Pavement is rough. Opposite of rough, of course, is smooth. What else? What other texture are there? Mhm. Something can be wet, bumpy, sure, and sharp, yeah. Moist, damp, right? Different kind of wet too, right? Dull, very good. Okay, great. You get the idea. Smell? What kind of smell are there? How do things smell like? It smells funky. Um, yeah, I mean, but like what's funky to you might not be funky to me, right? Anything else? Odor means smell, right? Yeah, okay, so yeah, stinky, sure. It's like smell bad, like stinky. Sweet, that's good. It has a strong smell, yeah. People sometimes say it's pungent, right? Pungent. Sour, right? That's good. Okay. Smell like acid, right? Smell like rancid, right? Garbage. Smells like laundry, right? There's so many different kind of smell. Okay. Another what else do we have? We have sight, we have touch, we have smell, taste, yeah. So you shouldn't be tasting things in the lab, right? Unless like you were asked to taste it. But things can taste sour, things can taste sweet, of course. Yeah, bitter like coffee, or Brussels sprouts. Um, what else can it taste like? Okay, yeah, sour, right? Sour is acidic, yeah. Sweet, bitter, tangy, yeah, sure. Yep, salty. That's the one I'm looking for. Okay, salty. And then there's also one called umami, which is Japanese for yummy. And you actually have a taste bud for umami, and they would get activated when you eat something savory, like think of your favorite snack, like potato chips or something like that. It has that umami flavor to it. Yeah, MSG, right? But not necessarily like the bad form of it, because MSG are like naturally occurring in meats, right? It's like a amino acid. So when you eat like steak or something like that, there's that umami flavor to it. Okay, so that's taste. And the last one is sound, right? Now, this one is rare. Like we don't really use this too much in an indoor lab. Sound is more like if you're observing like a new animal or something, like what is the mating call of a bird or something, then you would use the sound to describe it. So like, it's hard to give examples. Yeah, but sure. Yeah. Oh, like those rhino are so loud, right? Or yeah, there's a high pitched sound. That's good. You guys are more imaginative than I am. Yeah, it sounds echoey, sure. It sounds like there's a popping sound. You might have used that description before when you do your chemistry lab before, whistle. Yeah, exactly. A bunch of different weird sounds that things can make, right? Okay. The point I'm trying to make is these are qualitative observations, and you are observing using your senses only. Okay, let's get back to our PowerPoint slides here. So let's say we have a picture here. Again, it's better if you don't assume you know what you're looking at, okay? And what are some of the qualitative observations you can make? Give me some applicable observations here. Someone shows you this thing and they're like, describe it to me. What can you say? Again, don't think about what this is. It doesn't matter. It's actually better if you don't know what it is, like that you're just describing it the best you can. It's like what is that game called? Like you just describe something and someone has to guess what you're describing. It's like that. Yeah, great. It's oval shape. Good. I'm just gonna write some of these down here. Oval shape. Smooth. Okay. Um, anyone else think this is not smooth? Okay, so yeah, some people say this is rough, right? Okay. So you see that's an interesting thing, right? And that is actually the limitation of qualitative observations. Qualitative observations are very subjective. It depends on who's describing it. You might think this is smooth, someone else might think this is rough. Okay. Um, but some are like not really subjective, right? Some description, it's pretty standard. Like, what color would you say this is? Actually, someone, Mike already said it, right? It's gray, right? Gray color, gray in color. I don't think anyone would be disagreeing with you that this is gray. Okay? So some qualitative observations are not subjective. Okay? Others can be subjective. Small in shape. You see, like that's another one, Vahima. Small is relative. Like, like how do we know? How do we know this is small? Right? Like maybe if you put a picture of a person next to it, I'm just saying, right? If you put a picture of a person next to it, then this would be huge. Okay. But maybe this is something that you're looking through a microscope, then it's small, right? So again, that qualitative observations is it varies from person to person. Okay, so we have a few other good ones. There are multiple of these things on the screen. Some are small in shape, some are longer, right? Some are spherical, maybe, right? And then there are little bits and pieces of debris here and there, clustered. I like that one, right? It's very packed, very high density here. Right? Anyway, I think we have enough. That is qualitative observations. Okay? And this is part of discovery science. You're not changing anything. You're just observing. You're just looking at things as they are, and you're recording down what it is that you're looking at. So because qualitative observations are quite subjective, let me write down for you. Might be subjective. Subjective means it depends on the person, okay? Right? Smell is a very subjective thing. Okay? What smells good to you might not smell good to someone else. Okay? Every time we walk by that bodywork store, where they sell like very strong scented stuff, I try to avoid it. I was like, oh, this is very strong smell. It's like giving me headaches. My daughters, they love it. They're like, oh, that smells so nice. Right? It's very subjective. Depends on the person. So to avoid giving observations that are very subjective, we sometimes would use quantitative observations instead. So quantitative involves measurements, involves using instruments to measure things with numbers. Okay, so qualitative, it's talking about the quality of things. Think about buying a new shirt or something. You feel the quality with your hand, right? Whereas quantitative, it's measurement. These are often more objective, right? If we are all using the same ruler and we all know how to use a ruler, your measurement should be the same as mine. It doesn't matter who's doing the measurement. As long as we're using the same instrument and doing it correctly, we should have the same answer. Okay, so here in this picture, this is you're looking at some bacteria, and a lot of times when you look at these things and you take a picture of it, you need to include a scale. Okay, so there's a let me see if I can choose a different color here. Right here, you have to include a scale. The scale tells people how long this white line is. So this white line here is 10 micrometer. Okay, so is micrometer. For those of you who don't know, and that's okay if you don't, you will learn this in math later. 1 meter equals to a million micrometer. Okay, so a millionth of a meter is a micrometer. Now, if we have this reference, then we can say, okay, let's look at this bacteria here, and it looks like it is I'm able to fit like 3 of these things along the white line. So I'm gonna say this is approximately 3 micrometer. Now, is that really accurate? Not really. Okay, like if we want to do very, very accurate measurements, we would have to, do other types of in-depth measurements and calculations. But roughly, I would be able to say that this is 3 micrometer. Okay, so this is quantitative. Now let's go back to our note here, and we're going to list some more quantitative observations. Quantitative. So what are some examples of quantitative observations? Okay, so we have length. Okay, width and height, of course. Yeah, but anything else? Length, width, height. Anything else we can measure? Yep, temperature, that's good. Right, we can measure the mass of something, how many kilograms, how many pounds, the weight, the mass, yeah. What else? Good, volume. We can have things like density, right? Just to give you a few other more complicated ones, we can measure things like conductivity. How much electricity can it go through, for example? What's APH, Micah? Oh, pH, okay, yeah, pH, yep, that's good. Right, how acidic something is, right? Okay, so all these things you can put a number to it. If you can put a number to it, then it's quantitative. So when you are doing your lab, your beetroot lab, you will be making both qualitative as well as quantitative observation, virtually, of course. Are we all together? Any questions at all about anything? All right. So when we are doing discovery science, when we're making all these observations, the point of it is to gather all our observations and try to come up with some kind of conclusion from it. Okay. When we take a bunch of individual observations and we try to generalize it into some kind of conclusion, this kind of reasoning is called inductive reasoning. You are taking a bunch of different observations, observation 1, observation 2, 3, and 4, and you're trying to come up with a generalization. This is called inductive reasoning. Sometimes you have to group these observations into different things, different categories, and then you can come up with different generalization, different conclusions. Okay? But again, going from specific to general, that is inductive reasoning. Let me give you a few examples to help you understand this. So back to school, right? Today, if you're a parent, congratulations. You're probably as happy as I am that your kids are back to school. So I took them to shop for some stationeries, a Dollarama, and and then my younger daughter, she wanted to get this eraser thing, and so she asked me, "Hey, there's no price on it. Like, how much is it?" So I was thinking, eh, let's teach her about inductive reasoning. So I asked her, "Hey, where did you get this thing?" She told me to the aisle where she got the eraser, and yeah, there was no price. So I asked her, "Let's take a look at other things that is over here. Okay, like how much is it's the ruler there?" She's like, "Oh, that's $2." Right, so the ruler's $2. How about the I don't know, those staplers? So $2. Okay, and then how about the pens there? So $2. And then after a little bit, she came to the realization that, oh, so the eraser is also $2, right? So you see, there are many different observations, right? Whatever I said, the rulers are $2, the pencils are $2, the staplers are $2. And then what's the conclusion here? Everything in this section is probably $2, right? So that's inductive reasoning. Now, does that mean is correct necessarily? No, not really. And sometimes in science, our observations lead to incorrect conclusion, but that's not the point. The point is to use this kind of logic to go from specific examples to a general conclusion. That's called inductive reasoning. Do you guys understand? All right, thank you. Let's try another example. So here we have a fly, and this is what it looks like when you zoom into the wings of a fly. So we can say fly is made up of cells. Okay, these are cells, okay, of the wings. And then you look at a tree, and you can say tree is made up of cells. Okay, so that's observation one. Observation two, you look at fish, and you're like, oh, fish is made of cells as well. You get it, right? Birds are made of cells, mushrooms are made of cells. These are all individual observations. So if I'm using inductive reasoning, what would be my logical conclusion? Okay, I have all these individual observations. Okay, so Michael said everything is made of cells. Let's fine tune that a little bit. Yeah, Fahima said living things are made of cells. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so all living things are made of cells. Okay, so that's the generalization, right? That makes sense. So that's inductive reasoning, using specific examples, specific observations, coming up with some general statement. So usually most people are okay with inductive reasoning. But then when I talk about deductive reasoning, and then that's when things get a little bit confused. So I just want to triple check that you guys are all okay with inductive reasoning before I move on to the next slide. Any question at all? You can ask anything. If you have a question, someone else probably have the same question.
Can you give one more example?
Sure. I can say last time I had strawberry, I had this really itchy rash. Okay. And then I had strawberry again at the party, and then I get these hives again. So after a few more times of doing this, eating strawberries and then getting all these itchy things afterwards, my conclusion is that I'm allergic to strawberries. Yeah, that's inductive reasoning. Does that help a little bit? Or you want another one? Okay, so daily lives, we do this all the time. You like, if I leave the door at 8 o'clock, I'm gonna be late for class. Okay, it happened on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, so I better leave earlier next week, right? That's inductive reasoning. Let's talk about the other way around, which is deductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning flows from general to specific. Okay, so previously we made the conclusion that all living things are made of cells. So all living organisms are made of cells. When we do deductive reasoning, we are taking this general statement and we're applying it to a specific case. Okay, so if all organisms are made of cells, okay, and we have an ant here, we know that an ant is a living thing. And even though I haven't checked out what the ant is made up of yet, I can reasonably conclude that the ant is also consists of cells. That's deductive reasoning, applying a conclusion to a specific case. Just like my daughter, once she came to the conclusion that, oh, everything on this panel is $2, since I got the eraser from this panel, it is probably $2. Again, they could be wrong, but this kind of logic, this kind of reasoning is called deductive reasoning. Okay, so back to our diagram. If you take these individual observations, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you come up with a general statement, that's inductive. And then when you apply it to different cases, then that's deductive. And that's what science is about, right? Like you're trying to come up with some kind of trend based on what you observe, and then you use that to predict what would happen in other similar situations, right? Okay, let's try a question here. See what you think. Let me launch the poll.
Oh, sorry. Can you put the pull back on the screen?
I can't because it's in progress. But that's okay if you lost it. Just write out
Oh,
the
I
answer.
got it.
Okay,
I got it.
all right, good. Okay, that was a minute and a half. I think I'm gonna close the poll. Anyone else? If you want to lock in your answer before I do that, like a couple more seconds. Okay. I'll share the results with you. So look like A and C are the popular choices, right? So let's take a look. All right. So this would be like an example of an application question, right? Like it's not something you can look up in the notes and find the answer easily. It's like you have to apply what you know and try to figure out the answer. Let's do it over here. Okay. So we are looking for what are we looking for? We're looking for deductive reasoning, right? Deductive. What's deductive again? Is it from specific to general or general to specific?
General to specific.
That's right. This is from general to specific. So let's take a look. All viruses require a host to replicate. So that is general. So that could be the answer, right? We don't know. Now the thing is, on a test, some people once they see an answer, they stop reading, right? That's not very good practice. Always read everything before you choose the final answer. Okay. B. COVID-19, HPV, Ebola, influenza, or viruses, they require a host to replicate. Therefore, all viruses require a host to replicate. This is going from specific examples to a general statement, right? So that's not it. This is specific to general. So B is not correct. All viruses require a host to replicate. So again, we start with a general statement. That could be it. Last one. COVID-19 is a virus and it requires a host to replicate. Ebola is a virus, therefore it also requires a host to replicate. This is just going from one single example to another example. There is no generalization going on here at all. That is not it. So it's between A and C. So let's see which one is correct. Well, over here it says all viruses require a host to replicate. I'm going to highlight the word virus in yellow. I'm going to highlight host to replicate, require a host to replicate in green. So let's take a look at the next sentence. COVID-19 is a virus. It must require a host to replicate. Okay, so that looks correct. Let's see what C looks like, and see if it's something wrong with it or not. All viruses requires a host to replicate. Require a host to replicate. And then it says COVID-19 require a host to replicate. Therefore, it is a virus. So you see, in the third choice here, the logic is backwards. It's not right. The general statement is like, if yellow, then green. But the statement here is if green, then yellow. Whereas in choice A, if yellow is green, and then the statement also has the same logic. If yellow, then green. So that's why this is correct. Okay. Now, if you have trouble understanding why this is wrong, let me give you another example. Right. Instead of virus, I say all birds. All birds have, what do all birds have, guys? Give me something. Yep, wings. All birds have wings. Okay, and then I would say bees have wings. Therefore, bees are birds. Right? Like obviously this is wrong, right? Obviously bees are not birds, but let's see. Birds, okay? All birds have wings. And it says bee have wings, therefore bees are birds. You see, the order of the logic is flipped. That's why this is not correct. Do you understand this? Right? If yellow, then green, and then the statement says if green, then yellow, right? That's why C is not the answer.
All right, sorry, excuse me.
Yep.
So for the C, I feel like it's given like a direct answer, like a direct decision of a statement, but the A is incomplete.
It's not so much that it's incomplete or not. In both cases, they start with a general statement, and then they have a specific case. Okay, the specific case is that COVID-19 is a specific case, right? The problem here is how you are applying the general statement. Like, are you applying the general statement in the correct manner? That's basically what we're looking at, right? And you can see here, because the logic is backwards for C, that's why it didn't quite work out. Okay. Do you have a follow-up question to that, or?
So it basically boils down to like sentence structure at this point, or?
Well, yeah, first of all, you have to
Right.
know which one is deductive and which one is not, right? And then once you figure out which one is deductive,
Right.
the sentence structure matters, because if we ignore that, then we end up with situations where we make the wrong conclusion, right? Yeah.
Could it be that, because right now it's clearly that, as an example, yellow comes first and then it's followed by green. Could it be that you could paraphrase it to kind of change the order, but still have the same answer as A in this case?
If you change the order here,
Right. If I were to change, just paraphrase the whole thing as an example. And
okay,
then
so like
have
as an
green
example, like I think you're asking me like how would this make sense, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I
So
could make it make sense.
right. So the general statement would be something like this. If the general statement says anything that requires a host to replicate is a virus. Anything that requires a host to replicate is a virus. If that was the general statement, then the following statement is going to be valid, right? Okay, that's good. All right, don't worry. Not every single question is going to be like this on the test or quiz. Only a few. Okay, most of them will be reasonable. People generally do good, okay? But the ones who don't do good are the ones who don't come to class, okay? And just because you have the notes with you on the test, some people have this like psychological blanket that they don't have to study as hard. It's not true, okay? Like you really don't have time to flip through your notes and find the answers necessarily. You still do have to study a little bit. You still have to study quite a bit, I mean, to prepare for the test. Yeah, so that's that. Let me see what else we have here. So discovery science, we talk about how we make observations, different kind of observations, and how we can use those observations to make inductive and deductive reasoning, coming up with conclusions, applying those conclusions to different scenarios. That is part of discovery science. Now, once we make those conclusions, once we have these generalizations, if possible, then people would want to take it a step further and to test those generalizations. Right? They want to come up with a way to test these generalizations to see whether they're true or not, and that involves what we call the scientific method. Okay? So the scientific method is it's a process that involves a series of steps, things like observations, asking questions, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to give you one example before we go, and then we're going to go into much more detail about the scientific method next class. So you probably at some point in your life had this experience, okay? You try to turn on the TV, but then, after you press on the on button from the remote, it's not working. So that's the observation. The observation is that the remote doesn't work. The question would be, so you see, after observation, you ask a question. The question is, what is wrong with the remote? So you can come up with a tentative answer, which is what we call a hypothesis. So based on past experience, based on previous generalization that you came up with, you can say within reason that it's because the batteries are dead. That's the most common way of why it is not working. So you make a prediction. If I'm correct, then when I replace the battery, it will work. You carry out the experiment by replacing the battery. If you are correct and the remote works again, then you solve the problem. If it doesn't work, then you have to revise your hypothesis. Maybe it's not the battery. Maybe the TV is not plugged in. Right? So like you sometimes have to keep on looping, coming up with new hypothesis and testing it until you solve the problem. Okay. So here it says deduction usually takes the form of predictions about the experimental results, or observations are expected if the hypothesis is correct, right? So like this is an example of deductive reasoning because you are applying the generalization in this specific example that you're trying to solve. So that's it for today. Next class is Thursday, same time, 12:30, and we will finish the rest of the lesson. Okay, but start working on the study guide. Check the news items in a bit after class. I'll post a few links for you to get the recordings and other useful information. Okay, thank you for coming and thank you for your attention. Enjoy the rest of the day. See you Thursday. Bye-bye.